Hey, what is up, my YouTubian subscribers? Scared here to do my, I guess it's a reply video to Martin White the second, and his video about maidens and Raven as the Spring Maiden and such. Now, basically, there's like two videos in one here. He rambles on at the end of the video. He basically addresses Raven's age, and then goes on to a ramble about the problems with the maidens in general. Now, the problems I'm gonna talk Raven as the Spring Maiden, and then probably do a second video about the maidens in general and my problem with them, because I do have problems with the maidens. So, like, comment down below. On with the show. Now, he does address one of the key problems with Raven as the Spring Maiden, which is her age. Raven's just too freaking old. No matter how we look at it, the things we know, the concrete things we know about her backstory, contradict her ever becoming a maiden. The timeline doesn't make sense. We know, first off, 2 years have passed since the beginning of Volume 1. We know that because Volume 1 opens shortly before the school year. So, late summer, early fall, give or take. And then Volume 3 ends shortly before the end of the school year, which is late spring, early summer, give or take a few weeks here or there. But we also know that Team Ranger didn't leave Patch for at least 6 months. Again, we know this because that when Ranger leaves Patch, it's winter time. We know, so, and it's not a winter time that can be like, maybe it's late fall and it's just, no, the trees are completely gone. There's a layer of snow over everything. So yeah, it's mid, at least it's into the at least midwinter, if not late winter, when they leave Patch. So to all those people who are saying, oh, Ruby's such a terrible sister because she left Yang Yang, she spent like 6 months in Patch, maybe even up to 9 months in Patch. I'm gonna defend Ruby on that, because yeah, she spent a long time in frickin' Patch before leaving for Haven. Now, we know 2 years have passed because by the time they reach Haven in Volume 5, it's almost the beginning of the school year. So, yeah, a couple of weeks to a couple of months, like 2 months before it's 2 months before the school year begins. But by the end of Volume 5, it's a couple of weeks before the school year begins. Actually, I think that it's stated that the White Fang want to attack Haven before the students return. So yeah, it's late summer, early fall when by the time Volume 5 hits the end of Volume 5. So 2 years have passed. That means that Yang's 19, maybe even going on 20, depending on, like, you can push Yang closer to 20 if you want to say maybe Yang was turned 18 somewhere in the time skip between Volume 1 and, or between the Jean characters, because there is a time skip at the beginning, like at the Jean story arc and the Ruby story arc. There's a time skip there that it's a few months, give or take, again, because we don't know we just have rough estimates on the timeline. So yeah, we just know that there is a couple months time skip between Jean's story arc and Ruby's story arc and the finale story arc. So you could say Yang's birthday, maybe she turned 18 somewhere along the line, so now she's like 19 going on fucking 20. Now I'm gonna I'm gonna stick to the conservative 19 that we know, the 2 years that have passed, for a fact that have passed, because you can, when you begin to address things like that, where you're just talking hypotheticals left, right, and center, it's just, it opens you up to people ripping into your video. But we do know concretely that 2 years have passed since the beginning of Volume 2, or since the beginning of Volume 1, which, yeah, nice to know. If you want to know, that means Yang's 19. That means that in order for the maiden, in order for, and then we know that Raven graduated. That means that graduated from Beacon. That means she was like 21, 22, probably closer to 22. If she was 21, now again, there's hypotheticals here. I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna say 22 because 9 months, 9 months out of the year she's pregnant. That means she's probably, odds are she's 22 now. You could argue that she's closer to 23 again, depending on how, because again, it's hard to have a kid. It's not an easy task to have a kid. Yeah, it's the basics, but some people, it's just fertility rates, when you're having sex, things like that address. So yeah, maybe it took Ty and Raven a couple months to have a kid. Again, That being said, I'm gonna say 20. I'm gonna say 22 because it would make sense if she graduated and then immediately had Yang. That means she would be close to 22. That means that she's 31 minimum before fucking the maiden even fled from Leo Lionheart. Now there is the, oh, she disappeared, what was it, she disappeared around 10 years ago. It's like, well, again, I'm gonna say that I err on the side of closer to 10 years than closer to something like 15 years, because it's a maiden. They're not gonna, Leo Lionheart's not gonna make a statement like, oh, she disappeared short like 10 years ago and really mean 15, 20 years ago, because it just doesn't make sense. That he would, Vernal would have had to be a much older to play the role of the maiden, but B, it just wouldn't make sense that it wouldn't make sense that Leo wouldn't know when the maiden disappeared. So I err on the side that it's closer to 10 years than 20 years. That being said, even if you jiggle around, play around with the timeline a bit, yeah, you can lower Raven to 28, 29 before getting the maiden powers. The problem is that all of this is hypothetical this is all hypothetical based on the fact that we don't know how long. It all comes down to how long Raven spent as Ospen's spy work, or whatever they did for Ospen, working for Ospen. Now, that's the biggest issue here. If she spent even 2 freaking years working for Ospen, then it becomes that means she's like 33, 34 before becoming the maiden. If she spent even a year, she'd be 32, 33 before becoming the maiden. It's just very, very difficult. I'm not gonna say it's impossible. Like, there are some crazy freaking and then you would need to also overlap her pregnancy with the last few months of Beacon in order for, again, it's really, the timeline for Raven to be the Spring Maiden is so freaking messy right now. It's just damn near impossible. You need to do a bunch of logical leaps. You need to do a bunch just bunch of I don't even know how to word it. You need to drink the Kool-Aid, essentially, the Miles and Carrie Kool-Aid, for it to make sense. Oh, maybe she worked for Ospen for only a few months after Beacon, things like that. But even then, if she worked for Ospen for like 6 months, even then she's still like 31, 32, so that's all I'm gonna say. It's very, very difficult for you to get Raven under 30 while still being logical. And then there's the things like there's the less obvious things, like just the amount of knowledge she knows. And I know some people will argue that, oh well, we don't even know everything she knows, for one. For two, Ranger and Ruby aren't good enough barometers for what Ospen tells his group. They're already recruited. They're already neck deep into Ospen's war, and he's still lying to them. He's still hiding things from them. This is a guy who lies to his freaking body, to Oscar, who tells Oscar they're gonna eventually fuse into one, when all evidence points towards him possessing Oscar. There's just not enough evidence to say that Ospen would be so open with the knowledge that Raven confirms to have, that we can say that, oh, he would tell a 21-year-old, 19-year-old Raven and Crow. And then there's the fact that it took months and months and months for the first maidens, to convince Ospen to leave his house. Like, he's not a very open person, is what I'm getting at. So these theories that he would give up a portion of his powers to Raven and Crow without being completely 100% sure that they're gonna work for him for the rest of their life is just, it's difficult, again, to say that she worked for him for anything less than at least 2 years. Again, it's just the amount of stuff she knows, how Ospen and how Crow interacts with Ospen. It's just very, very difficult to say she spent less than a year, maybe 2 years. I used to think she spent at least 10 years working for Ospen, and Not so much now because we can't argue that. But yeah, see what I'm saying about the age thing? It's just, I know I've rambled on about the age, but that's just a lore breaking moment in Ruby history. Now let's move on. Character motivation. It doesn't make sense that Raven would make the decision. Ravens are a very, very contradictory character. I'm not gonna lie, or I'm not gonna play pretend and be like, oh, Raven's just like this, that, don't. No, she's a very self-contradictory character. The fact is, she's a cat. She's a very, very powerful coward. That's her whole storyline. That being said, she doesn't. She so you can argue that, yeah, it makes sense that even though she wants nothing to do with Ospen, she would take the maiden in. But to me, you need to make so many leaps of logic there. Like, you need to again assume, yeah, she could have taken the maiden in while still fitting her character, but then killing the maiden and then taking the maiden's power for herself, that's another level. That's she's locking herself in to the war with Salem in that moment. The moment she takes the maiden's powers is the moment she locks herself into the war with Ospen and Salem, and it's so you can't again. It's very, very it's beyond being a coward but being strong. It's beyond anything I've ever seen. Like, it's just it's contradictory. Then we move backwards a bit to her. She's openly using her powers, even through Vernal. She's using them on a grand enough scale and on a frequent enough basis that Crow. I think a lot of people forget that Crow was a teacher at Signal Academy. That means that Crow at most has like maybe a month, a year. Assuming again, that's assuming that. So he's, and I know what you're thinking. Well, how does he have a month? Most summers last 3 months, or maybe even up to 3.5 months. He would need to go fly between frickin'. He would need to fly between Patch and Haven, which took Ranger 6 months to, again, maybe less. But again, if he's flying back and forth, I'm gonna say maybe 2 months. It would take him again, and just flying as the bird flies straight across. Yeah, so 2 months, give or take. He would have, and then like, it's just stupid. It's one of those moments where it's like, well, if she wants to hide her, if she spends all of her time in volume 5 hiding her maiden powers, why is she using them so frequently and on a grand enough scale that Crow's able to, with a few weeks a year, find out that she has. Now, a lot of people misconstrue when I say this. I mean, she has the maiden. She isn't the maiden. Crow doesn't know that she's the maiden. Okay, I'm not saying Crow knew she was the maiden. I'm saying that Crow knew she had the maiden. So she's using her powers, just again, just rife with contradictory motives. Like, it's, and then narratively, it just doesn't fucking make sense. Again, like I said, most of it is the character motive when you talk about narratives. But Raven was already a very, very powerful character. Raven right now is the single strongest character we've met by like a large fucking margin. This isn't like if Cinder was like a 9, Raven's like a 15. Raven isn't. It's scary how much more powerful Raven is. She in 2 minutes she kills the strongest character we've seen in the series in Cinderfall. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, maybe Cinder's gonna live. I'm betting she's gonna live personally. I know I just said she killed her. Logically, she should be dead. No aura, frozen from the inside out. I don't see her. She shouldn't logically live, but they're not gonna kill a villain off like that. That being said, like, it destroys any power scale you have. It destroys any fear she should have for Salem. For one, because Salem hasn't. We don't even know enough. We don't know enough about Salem for her to be a threat. And what we do know, like, she is apparently the Grimland. If you look at the map of Remnant, there is no place on that map that looks like where Salem's castle is. There's no moment. There's not a large black swath as if it hasn't been explored, but they know stuff is there. She could be in another plane of existence right now, and teleporting Hazel, Wasp, Tyrion, and Cinder to and from said place. So just having issues like. But anyways, back onto Raven. Raven's, it just, like I said, narratively it doesn't make sense that Raven would be scared. She killed Cinderfall in 2 minutes. Tyrion was arguably losing the fight to her brother, who she's much stronger than. Hazel's a fucking meathead who literally just sticks fucking dust crystals into. They literally had to nerf the shit out of Crow for Hazel to make sense. They removed his speed feats, his strength feats, his durability feats, all of it, in order for Hazel to be a threat. And then Watts, who may not be a combatant, because the only statements we know about Watts is that he's ex Atlesian scientist, and he hasn't done anything overtly physical yet. Now he probably can fight. I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying that we don't know if he how good of a fighter he is yet. But still, Raven's fears are irrational to a large degree, and again, she's a contradictory character, so it doesn't matter that she has irrational fears. Um, that being said, it's one of those moments, and then you look back at how Glinda Glidwitch talks about Glinda's too old to be a maiden. That's just when I freaked out on the volume 12 or volume 5 chapter 12 first impressions. I was like, oh, why the because we didn't know how the maidens worked. We now know a little bit more about how the maidens work, which is 30's the cutoff day. So Glinda's just too old to be a maiden. I'm not saying, but the problem is, why not Winter Schnee? I mean, there has to be hundreds of huntresses who are under 30, if not thousands of huntresses who are under 30. Um, just why one of your students, why have Glinda Goodwitch lie about, like, how, go back and watch how Glinda talks. They talk like Ospen and his Illuminati are like a third entity to Salem, the wizard, and the maidens. They act like the Ospin's Illuminati came in. The Oz Illuminati came in as like a fourth player to the chessboard. And you listen to her talk. She talk, like I said, a lot of people are like, well, they're trying to hide from Pierre Nikos. They don't want to give her too much. It's lying by omission, and lying by omission are still lies. How they act in that scene. Crows. Oh, only old hags. Yeah, I get, like, young women, old hags. Just, they lied to her. They didn't tell her the stuff she needed to know to make an informed decision. They didn't tell her that she'd be living her life as a slave to Ospen, essentially, to either that or hunted by Cinderfall for the rest of her life. They didn't tell her that. They didn't tell her that there's a grim woman controlling all the grim to attack human beings. They didn't tell her not. They just didn't give her everything she needed to know to make an informed decision. And you may say, well, they gave her enough to this. No, they manipulated her. They used the fact that she was raised to think her destiny is to be this super huntress. And yeah, that's just how I feel. And it's, I don't know if they intended it. I don't even know if they intended Osmond to be the old man from the story, due to the fact that Glinda Goodwitch acts like he's not. Either that or Glinda didn't freaking know about him being the old wizard from the story, which then opens up a whole new can of worms about who knows, who doesn't know, just a bunch of shit like that. I know I'm just, I don't want to get too heated when I'm talking about this. That's why I take pauses like that. It's because this is one of those moments. This is a jump the shark moment in Ruby. They can't ever recover the maiden storyline because of what they did with Raven. They can't make the maidens interesting. They can't make the storyline coherent. They just can't. The maidens they already broke the series a little bit by being just so much stronger than everyone else, but not unreasonable. So, like, I could see Team Ruby teaming up and killing a maiden. I can't see Raven ever dying, because she's just that much stronger than everyone else. What they're gonna need to do is, Cinderfall's gonna need to come back. And even the problem is, if Cinderfall comes back, she's definitely gonna have more Grim appendages, and then that weakens Cinderfall, because Grim are pathetic. So, but because she gets more Grim appendages, they're gonna act like that's some kind of power up, and it's gonna enable her to kill Raven Bronwyn. And when I'm like, you know what? No, that shouldn't happen. That's just, but that's probably what's gonna happen. They're gonna bring her back, give her Grim shit, instead of just slicing her up like she's a fucking Grim. Raven's gonna do the same thing. She's gonna that she did before, which like there's just disgusting. And yeah, I'm mad at this plot line. I'm not gonna say I'm not mad at it. I'm furious. I think that not enough people are calling this shit out for what it is, which is shit. And yeah, like, comment down below. Securage signing off.